So I thought I'd start by doing a really brief background to who I am and how I got into permaculture. I had quite a lovely arty, outdoorsy childhood, really. My parents and grandparents grew vegetables in the garden. They were really interested in bird watching. And I particularly remembering attending a Think Green event when I was about 10 years old. And it was just full of environmental businesses and companies. I just felt really excited about saving the planet. I decided to become a vegetarian when I was still at primary school, although no one else in my family was. So I always had quite strong feelings around environmental issues. And this carried on as an adult as well, really. Went travelling. We got an old bus, did it up into a camper van and travelled around Europe and had some amazing experiences and met some really inspiring people who were living in very sustainable ways, very connected to nature and the land. They really inspired me, and one of the couples that we met when we were travelling told me about this word permaculture that I'd never heard of before. But I knew everything they were talking about: sustainability, living lightly on the land, voluntary simplicity. All these things really registered on my radar, but I'd never heard of anything that pulled all these interests together before. So yes, permaculture. This particular couple were called Anders and Joe. They gave us a permaculture magazine, which we devoured from front to back, and then continued getting that. Started gathering books about permaculture. We got ourselves an allotment. And I also started bringing a bit more environmental education into my work role. I've always worked in arts education and became more and more interested in teaching other people about the environment and about permaculture. Then in 2012, I was really excited to find a permaculture design certificate course in the town where I live. So I signed up, did that, felt amazingly inspired by it, met some fab people, including my tutor Hannah, who can speak so eloquently on such a range of subjects. I was just blown away by her. So I had a bit of time, I had a bit of a maternity break, and was able to really jump into my permaculture diploma almost straight away after completing my PDC. So I'm going to just talk briefly now about each of my 10 designs. So my first design was designing a community allotment. And this is the design that really set me on a new path that I'm still on now. So my sister worked for TCV, the Conservation Volunteers, and part of her role was to develop a community allotment and make it more accessible for education. I worked with her and we set up a allotment playgroup, making a safe space within the allotment that was going to be safe for preschool children to play and learn in. My second design was designing how to grow food in my own garden so that I could harvest something from my garden every day between March and October. So it was quite a nice specific goal that I set myself. Sometimes I would be harvesting a little posy of flowers. Sometimes it would just be some herbs to put on whatever I was cooking. So it wasn't too much pressure. I wasn't striving to be self-sufficient. I just wanted to spend more time outdoors. My third design was when I really got into environmental education and turned Muddy Boots from a bit of a hobby that I was doing as a volunteer into more of a business for myself. How do you market to people? How do you gain all the permissions you need? How do you write your session plans? So it was very practical, very day to day around running Muddy Boots. Loved doing that. It's still useful. I still look at it today. And Muddy Boots has gone on from strength to strength, really, and is now basically my full-time job. After that, I moved on to design number 4. That was around my health and well-being. At this point, I'd had my third child, was completely consumed in the fog of being a new mum, and felt that I'd let my health go quite a lot, really. So I wanted a design that improved what I ate, how I exercised, my self-care, and how sort of mindset stuff as well, really, how I felt. To design number 5, this was my pathway planning. So this is something that we're advised to do at the very start of our diploma journey. And I'd done bits and pieces. I'd done quite a lot of thinking, brainstorming. I'd recorded things that had influenced me along the way, but I hadn't written it up at all. So it was really useful at this point, which is sort of the midway point of my journey, to really reflect back on what I'd done to date, and then also plot my way to the end of the diploma. I was really, really busy. Muddy Boots had taken off massively. I'd gone from doing one session every other week to 4 sessions every week. So very busy with that, as well as looking after the kids. I'm still doing a bit of arts teaching. So the diploma had really dropped to the bottom of my to-do list, and I really didn't know whether to continue with it or not. So the pathway design really helped me to make a decision to continue with the diploma and plot a route through to the end. Then I did a design, a fun design really, around creating a food group with some of my friends. We'd been talking a lot about not liking supermarkets, not really liking the food that was available to us. So we created design about how to order our food together, and also how to start changing that food culture for our families, having shared meals together, exploring whole foods, veganism. So that was a fun design. It was relatively quick compared to the others, and it was about setting up systems and working with other people. Then after that, I went on to redesign the Muddy Boots garden that I'd designed initially for my PDC. I'd been applying for some money, and I was lucky enough to get a small grant that I used to extend the garden area that was available to us at the community allotment. Then there was a bit of a lull in proceedings, really, when I was focusing on becoming a forest school leader and setting up my forest school business. And then I jumped back in with a design that looked at how I'd used permaculture in my forest school journey, and specifically using permaculture to design one forest school event. And I was really interested in doing something for women, because I'd noticed how much the mums got out of bringing their kids to my sessions, and I thought I wanted to trial doing a women's day out in the woods. So that was my Wild Roots retreat day. I used permaculture in lots of different ways in that. One that really stands out to me was looking at natural patterns and trying to mimic them. So I looked a lot at the moon cycle, about the waxing and the waning and the new and the full moon, and how I could use that to schedule events around my day. Then leading on from that, I got really, really interested in the moon cycle and women's menstrual cycles, and how that affects our mood and productivity. How women, cyclical beings, are so different from men in their linear world, and how we can use that to our advantage. So I did a design called Designing My Next Steps Using Natural Cycles, creating my own permaculture design process based on this idea that we have 4 different phases every month. And I used that design to think about the next steps for myself in terms of my business. Last design, I wanted it to be relatively quick, and I also wanted it to be at least partly land-based, because I'd done a lot of non-land-based people and systems-based designing. And I love maps, I love drawing, so I wanted to get back to doing a bit of that, really. So I decided to do a design called Wild and Healthy, how to grow and forage herbs, fruits and vegetables, and use them in my diet to prevent and cure coughs and colds. Having 3 young kids, there's always somebody ill in my house. So Wild and Healthy design looked at including new plants in my garden that I could use in remedies, and how to forage in my local area for things that I could use. It's been a really interesting process. I've learned loads about myself. It's been really interesting being able to tailor some work to my specific interests. It has been challenging with it being self-directed. It's taken me 5 years and I very nearly dropped out midway through. So I'm really excited and pleased to be at this point. Planning on continuing using permaculture, and I use the processes almost in quite an unconscious way now when I'm making decisions about things. What I've learned to slow down, look at a range of options, and then make some intelligent decisions, hopefully. So that's it. I hope you enjoy looking through my blog and my diploma designs. Thank you very much for listening.